My dad gave my hotel room to my sister's videographer. My parents stayed silent. My sister smirked, "You can afford a motel." I said, "If I rank below your ring light guy, I'm gone." 1 hour later, it happened. They gave my hotel room to a videographer. I stood at the marble front desk of a Las Vegas resort. 60 hours of overtime still sitting in my shoulders like wet sand. And a clerk named Connor told me, very gently, that my name wasn't on the reservation. 3 suites, my parents, my sister, and a 26-year-old named Logan who films my sister's Instagram reels for a living. "Give the room to Logan," my father said. He didn't even turn his head. "He's got camera equipment. You'll figure it out." My sister Madison laughed, sharp as a dropped wine glass. "Don't be dramatic, Odd. You make tech money. Get a Holiday Inn." I stood there holding the handle of my suitcase so tight, my knuckles went white. And I understood, in that one airless second, that this wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Somebody had sat down and decided that I ranked below the guy holding the ring light. "If that's where I fall on the list," I said, "there's no reason for me to stay." I turned around and walked toward the sliding glass doors, the desert heat already shimmering through the glass like a mirage. That's when my phone buzzed in my blazer pocket. I didn't know it yet, but that text was the first thread of something that would end with cameras, a detective, a lawyer, and Interstate 15 lit up like Christmas by the time it was over. I stood there for a second longer than I needed to, watching my own reflection warp in the gold-veined marble behind the desk. And I remember thinking, this is the part where I'm supposed to cry. I didn't. Something colder was already moving in underneath the hurt, quiet and patient, like water finding a crack in a foundation. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense unless you understand who I was 5 hours earlier. I'm Claire Bennett, 29, senior lead developer at Vertex Tech, a mid-sized enterprise software company headquartered in Austin. I'd spent 3 years there, climbing from junior engineer to running the back-end infrastructure team, the kind of job where nobody claps for you, but everything breaks if you leave. I liked it that way. I liked being the person things depended on. My family has never quite known what to do with that. The Bennetts run on charisma. My father, Thomas Bennett, is CEO of Bennett Realty Group, a commercial development firm with his name on 3 buildings downtown. My mother, Evelyn, has never worked a day in her life and has never once let anyone forget it. My sister Madison is 26, a wellness influencer with 400,000 followers and a personality that runs entirely on being watched. And my grandfather, Edward Bennett, built the family fortune 40 years ago and has spent every year since making sure everyone remembers it. 8 months earlier, Madison had called me crying. Her engagement numbers were slipping, she said, and she needed something to reignite the brand, a daily affirmation app, something simple, something with her face on it. I said yes because she's my sister, and because saying no to a Bennett costs more than saying yes. I spent 3 months of weekends building Aura. I wrote the backend, designed the database, built the authentication system, hosted it on my own AWS account under my own billing profile. Madison did the marketing copy and the launch video. That was the whole division of labor. I never signed anything. There was never a contract. It was a favor, dressed up as a partnership, dressed up as a family project. I didn't think it needed paperwork. Families don't sue each other. I should have known better. I'm the one who reads the terms and conditions. I just never thought I'd need to read my own family's. There'd been signs before, if I'm honest, small ones I'd filed away instead of following. In 10th grade, Madison helped with my science fair project, a water filtration model I'd spent a month building. By standing next to it during judging while I stayed home with the flu, she won a ribbon. I got a certificate of participation mailed to the house 2 weeks later. My mother framed Madison's ribbon. Nobody framed my certificate. I told myself it was a kid thing, a one-time thing, the kind of story families laugh about at Thanksgiving. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern with a 15-year head start, and I'd spent 15 years calling it something gentler than what it was. Natalie texted again while I stood frozen by the fountain outside, this one landing before I'd even fully processed the first. Also, heads up, the deck lists Madison as founder and lead engineer, or thought you should know before you walk in there. Founder and lead engineer. 2 titles, 0 code written, and my name appearing exactly nowhere. I asked Logan for the deck directly, catching him by the elevators while he fumbled with a lens case. He looked at me like I'd asked him to hand over a weapon. Madison said not to show anyone the deck before the dinner, he said, not unkindly. Just tired? Another 20-something paid to point a camera at whatever the Bennetts wanted filmed, but he showed me the title slide anyway, flashing it for 3 seconds on his phone before pulling it back like he'd broken a rule he didn't fully understand. Founder and lead engineer, Madison Bennett. My stomach didn't just drop, it emptied out entirely, the way a room empties when the power cuts. The text on the sidewalk was from Natalie Brooks. We'd worked the same back-end team at Vertex for 2 years before she left for a product role at LuxLife Media, a mid-market growth equity firm that acquires and scales consumer apps. Tell me Madison isn't pitching Aura to LuxLife tonight. The back-end's held together with duct tape. If she demos it live, it's going to crash. I read it twice. My first instinct, and I want to be honest about this, was to explain it away. Maybe Natalie meant a different app. Maybe this was some new project of Madison's I didn't know about. I told myself it was nothing. Then I remembered the invitation. Bennett family celebration, it said, 3 days in Vegas. Formal dinner Thursday night with a few of Madison's business partners. Nobody had told me the business partners were a private equity acquisitions team. Nobody had told me there was a demo. Nobody had told me anything, because I wasn't supposed to know until it was already signed. My stomach dropped the way it does on a plane losing altitude. My hands, I noticed, had started shaking slightly, the kind of tremor you get right before you do something you can't undo. I turned around and walked back through the sliding doors. Madison was still at the desk, arguing with the concierge about late checkout on a suite that wasn't even hers yet. I grabbed her arm. What deal, Madison? She rolled her eyes. The exaggerated, practiced role she's been doing since she was 9. It's not a big deal. LuxLife wants to acquire Aura. 5 million, maybe more if the metrics hold. I'm the face of the brand, so I'm the deal. You're pitching my code as your company. It's under my LLC, she said. Like that settled something legal instead of something moral. I registered it in March. Nobody cares who laid the bricks, Claire. They care who owns the building. That sentence, I want you to sit with that sentence, because I did, for a long time, standing in a hotel lobby in 104-degree heat with my sister's floral perfume in my throat. She had turned my 3 months of unpaid weekends into a punchline about masonry. I never signed anything over to your LLC, I said. There's no assignment. No work for hire agreement. Legally, that's still my code. Legally, Madison said. Is Dad's department not mine? Go ask him. I tried to fix it the easy way first. I asked for 10 minutes with her manager, the one handling the LuxLife relationship, to at least get my name added as technical co-founder before anything got signed. Madison said there wasn't time. The team was already en route. I asked her to just delay the demo an hour. She said, and I quote, "You're being so extra right now," and walked off toward the elevators. First attempt to fix it failed. I called my father directly. He picked up on the second ring, already sounding annoyed, like I was interrupting something important, which, to be fair to him, I was. I was interrupting his daughter's $5 million theft. Dad, did you know Madison is pitching Aura as her own product tonight? I know it's a family opportunity, he said. Don't make this difficult, Claire. The investors land in 3 hours. It's my code. It's a family asset, he said. And I heard behind him the click of his hotel room door. We're leveraging it where it provides the highest return. You should be proud. Proud, that was the word he used. I stood in the lobby, holding the phone away from my ear like it had bitten me. Second attempt to fix it. I asked calmly for him to at least tell LuxLife the truth about who built the back end. He told me the conversation was over and hung up. My mother found me by the fountain outside, twisting the strap of her handbag the way she does when she already knows she's not going to help. Your grandfather wants to talk to you, she said, and held out her phone like it was a subpoena. I want to tell you I hesitated. I didn't. I took the phone because some part of me, The part that had been trained since childhood to answer when Edward Bennett calls, still believed he might be the adult in the room. Claire, Edward's voice has never once in 29 years sounded warm. Your mother tells me you're jeopardizing tonight's acquisition over a matter of pride. He's stealing my work, Grandpa. I wrote every line of aura. I'm aware, he said, and the casualness of it took the wind out of me faster than any accusation could have. It's irrelevant. Madison has the audience. You have the skill set. We are allocating family resources where they generate yield. You are an engineer, Claire. Engineers execute. They don't negotiate terms. Third attempt. I told him I'd go to the dinner myself and simply tell the Lux Life team the truth. The line went quiet in a way that felt, even over a phone speaker in the desert heat, like the click of a chamber. Let me be very clear, Edward said. I play golf every other Sunday with Charles Donovan, CEO of Vertex Tech, your employer. If you embarrass this family tonight, my first call tomorrow morning is to Charles. I will tell him you are emotionally unstable, that you've attempted to extort your own family over intellectual property, and that you are a liability to his company. You will be terminated by Monday. I will make certain no serious firm in this industry touches your resume again. My knees actually buckled, not metaphorically. I felt them go soft, had to grab the fountain stone edge to stay upright. He wasn't threatening to disinherit me. He didn't care that I didn't want his money. He'd found the one thing I'd built with my own hands, outside of them, and he was holding a lighter under it. You'd end my career, I said, to protect hers. I am protecting the family, Edward said, and hung up. My mother took her phone back without a word, without so much as looking at me, and walked back inside like she'd delivered a package. Through the glass doors, I could see Madison waiting by the elevator bank, arms crossed, already smiling like she'd watched the whole thing happen exactly the way she'd planned. I found a 24-hour diner 3 blocks off the strip, the kind with sticky vinyl booths and a coffee machine that had clearly seen better decades, and I sat down and did the one thing I actually know how to do when the world is on fire. I opened my laptop. First call, Rachel Kim. Rachel is a technology and intellectual property attorney I'd found 2 years earlier, before any of this, back when Vertex had me sign an inventions agreement, and I wanted a second opinion. 12 years specializing in software ownership and licensing disputes. Name partner at a boutique firm in Austin. I called her personal line at 4:52 p.m. on a Thursday, which tells you something about the kind of client relationship you build when you bill by the hour and answer emergencies anyway. Claire. This better be good. I explained it in under 2 minutes. No contract, no work for hire agreement, hosted on my own AWS account, registered under Madison's LLC, $5 million, about to change hands in less than 3 hours. Under U.S. copyright law, Rachel said, and I could hear her typing while she talked, pulling something up. Authorship vests in the creator absent a signed transfer or a qualifying work for hire relationship. A verbal favor doesn't transfer anything. If there's no signed assignment, you are still, right now, the legal author and rights holder of that codebase. Madison's LLC, owning a trademark or a business entity around it doesn't change who owns the underlying work, so she can't sell it. She can absolutely try, Rachel said. People sell things they don't own constantly. It becomes fraud on her end and a very expensive lawsuit on Lux Life's end once it surfaces, and it will surface because these deals get audited. But Claire, if the money changes hands and the contracts get signed tonight, you're looking at 18 months of litigation to unwind it instead of one phone call to stop it. Timing is everything here. Do you have documentation, commit history, hosting records, anything with your name and a timestamp? I did. 3 years of GitHub commits under my own account, server logs, an AWS billing statement with my name on it going back to the day I built the first login screen. Send it to me now, Rachel said. I'm drafting a cease and desist and an ownership notice tonight. But Claire, I need to say this as your lawyer, not your friend. Someone in your family just threatened your employment to coerce you into silence. That's not just a family problem anymore. That's extortion, and depending on how explicit it was, it may be criminal. You should report it tonight before he makes that call to your CEO, not after. He's my grandfather, Rachel. He's a man who threatened to end your career on a recorded line, she said. Not unkindly, just precisely the way she says everything. Grief later, documentation first. That's the order that actually protects you. I sat with that for a second, watching a couple two booths over split a plate of onion rings like nothing in their lives had gone sideways today. Then I opened my email and started attaching comment logs, feeling for the first time in hours like I was doing something instead of absorbing something. Second call, Michael Grant, Associate General Counsel at Vertex Tech, 9 years in corporate compliance, the kind of quietly terrifying calm that comes from having heard every version of every disaster a company can have. I'd met Michael twice, both times in mandatory compliance trainings, which meant he had no idea who I was outside of a badge photo. I called the after-hours ethics line instead of his direct number because I wanted this on the record, time-stamped, official. I need to report an attempted external interference with my employment, I told the intake specialist. And then, when Michael called me back 19 minutes later, I told him the whole thing. Edward, the golf game, Charles Donovan, the threat to fabricate instability and misconduct to force my termination. Do you have this recorded? Michael asked. I did. A personal security app on my phone, the kind freelancers use to log client calls for billing disputes, had been running the entire time. An old habit from years of contract work before Vertex. Email me the audio and a written timeline tonight, Michael said. I'm going to be honest with you, Claire. If Mr. Donovan receives an unsolicited call tomorrow making unsubstantiated claims about your fitness for this role, the fact that you reported it to us first, with a recording, in writing, before that call ever happened, is the single most protective thing you could have done. It flips the entire narrative. Get me the file. For what it's worth, Michael added right before we hung up, you did this the right way. Most people call us after the fire, not before. This is going to matter. Rachel called back 20 minutes later with a plan instead of just advice. Here's what goes out tonight. Time-stamped and certified. A formal ownership notice to General Counsel, a cease and desist to Madison's LLC, and a preservation letter instructing everyone involved not to destroy any communications relevant to the dispute. That covers the Slack thread. So if anyone tries to delete it after tonight, that's spoliation. And it looks very bad for them in front of a judge. I'm labeling your commit logs Exhibit A, the AWS billing Exhibit B, the Slack thread Exhibit C, chain of custody matters here, Claire. Don't forward anything through a personal account you're not prepared to hand over later. Use the address I gave you. Nothing else. And if they sign the deal before any of that lands, then it gets uglier and slower, but it doesn't get impossible, Rachel said. I'd still rather you not find out which one we're dealing with. I sent it. 6:14 p.m. Exhibit A, Rachel would later call it. Exhibit B was the Slack thread I hadn't found yet. I found it 40 minutes later, half by instinct and half by habit. I'd kept limited admin visibility on Aura's backend since launch, mostly to monitor server load so Madison's marketing pushes didn't crash it. Buried in an integration log was a linked Slack workspace, Madison's brand team channel that I'd never had reason to open until tonight. I opened it anyway. Madison, May 14th, 2:15 p.m. The app is completely bricked. LuxLife wants a live demo. If it crashes on stage, we lose the 5 mil dad, May 14th, 2:20 p.m. Have you asked Claire to fix it? Madison, May 14th, 2:22 p.m. She's too busy with her real job. So useless. Dad, May 14th, 2:30 p.m. Fly her to Vegas for the celebration. Don't book her a room. Tell her she can have a bed once she patches it. If she pushes back, Edward will handle her. Keep her away from the actual dinner. Can't have her claiming credit in front of LuxLife. I read it 3 times. Then I sat very still in the sticky vinyl booth while the diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and something in my chest that had been aching for the last 2 hours went completely, permanently cold. They hadn't improvised this. They'd scheduled it. The missing room. The guilt trip. Edward's phone call. All of it had been planned 3 weeks in advance, itemized like a project timeline. My own family had run a coercion campaign against me with the same casual competence Madison uses to schedule a content calendar. I forwarded the screenshots to Rachel. Exhibit C. I want to tell you I made one more attempt to do this the decent way, and I did, because some stubborn part of me still hoped I was wrong about all of them. At 6:40 p.m., I emailed my father, my mother, and Madison together. I kept it short. I asked them to remove my name from any pitch materials that implied Madison's solely built aura, to disclose my authorship to Lux Life before the demo, and to call off whatever my grandfather was planning to do to my job. I gave them until 7 o'clock. Madison responded first at 6:52 p.m. For words, "You're being insane, odd." My father never responded at all. That was the fourth failed attempt, but it wasn't quite the last. Before I gave up on the polite version of this, I found the hotel's event coordinator, a composed woman named Vanessa with a headset and a tablet full of seating charts, and I asked, as calmly as I could manage, to be added as a listed guest to the Bennett Lux Life dinner. I told her I was a stakeholder in the product being presented. I even offered to show her my AWS billing history on my phone, which, in hindsight, is not a sentence most people expect to hear at a resort podium. Vanessa glanced past me toward my father, who was 15 feet away laughing warmly, with a hotel manager. He clearly tipped well and often. "I'm so sorry," she said, in the specific tone service workers use when they've already decided who the client is and who the problem is. But the reservation was finalized by Mr. Bennett's office. I'd need his sign-off to make any changes to the guest list. My father didn't even walk over. He just lifted 2 fingers off his glass in a small, dismissive wave, the universal signal for handle it, and Vanessa's expression softened into something that looked almost like pity. Fifth failed attempt. The house always sides with the man who owns the account. That was the last one I was going to make. Here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. Eventually, you get very, very good at the one skill nobody bothered to take seriously. Aura had shipped from day one with a licensing verification module, a standard safeguard I build into every piece of freelance work, the kind any competent engineer builds when there's no signed contract protecting them. It checks quietly on every app launch that the deployment is tied to an authenticated owner account. Mine. It had been sitting there, dormant, since the first release because I'd never had a reason to trigger it. I'd built it as a lock. I'd never once had to use the key. At 6:58 p.m., sitting in that diner with 2 hours until the presentation and roughly 0 patients left for my family, I decided to use it. I didn't write malware. I didn't hack anyone's account. It was my own code, on my own hosting, under my own name, doing exactly what I designed it to do 8 months earlier for exactly this scenario. If ownership is ever formally disputed and unverified, the app displays the true authorship record instead of the standard splash screen. I scheduled the trigger for 7:15 p.m., 15 minutes into the dinner, right when Madison would be holding her phone up to the projector, mid-pitch, telling a room full of investors that she'd coded this from the ground up. I attached one more file to the payload, the audio recording of Edward's threat, the one already sitting in Michael Grant's inbox at Vertex. I had 41 minutes to decide whether I was still the daughter who fixed things quietly or someone else entirely. 7 p.m. Madison's story updated. A photo of the ballroom string quartet, captioned, "Big Night." My jaw tightened. 7:06 p.m. My father's assistant confirmed, in a group text I wasn't supposed to still be on, that the contracts were printed and ready for signature after dessert. 7:09 p.m. I checked my own inbox. Rachel's notice had gone out. Lux Life's general counsel had opened it. I could see the red receipt, but hadn't replied. Nobody was going to stop this in time through the front door. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That was the strangest part. The fear had burned off somewhere between the diner booth and the Slack thread, and what was left underneath it was very still, very cold, and very sure. I pushed it live. The deployment bar filled. 98%. 99. Deployed. Then I did the only other thing that mattered. I emailed Rachel Kim and Michael Grant a single line each. Timestamped 7:01 p.m. Documentation and ownership notice going out tonight, regardless of outcome. Please confirm receipt. Because whatever happened at that dinner, I wasn't going to let this live only in my own head. I wanted it on the record, with people whose job title meant something. I checked into a hotel 3 blocks away under my own name, my own card, and opened Madison's Instagram live at 7:09 p.m. From the edge of the bed, my heart doing something closer to sprinting than beating. The ballroom looked exactly like the kind of room built to make people feel important. Low gold lighting, a string quartet nobody was listening to, my father working the room in a suit that cost more than my rent. Madison stood at a podium in a dress that had its own publicist. Champagne in hand, Logan adjusting a ring light 6 feet away. Jonathan Pierce, Lux Life CEO, silver hair, the kind of practiced warmth that comes from closing 100 deals, raised his glass. Madison Bennett represents the future of wellness tech. Madison, would you show us Aura? Of course, Jonathan, Madison said, connecting her phone to the projector. I built this platform from the ground up because I saw a need for authentic daily connection. It's a reflection of my soul. The splash screen came up, calm and pastel blue, exactly the way I designed it. The room nodded along. Madison swiped through screens I'd written 8 months ago at 2 in the morning, narrating them like she'd written a single line of them herself. I watched the clock in the corner of my screen, 714, 715. The screen tore into static. For 3 full seconds, nobody in that ballroom moved. Then the projector snapped to a field of solid crimson and white text filled the screen, large enough to read from the back row, ownership verification failed. This application was designed and is solely owned by Claire Bennett. No transfer agreement exists. Madison's face went the color of the tablecloths. It's just a glitch, she said, tapping frantically. Someone unplugged it was too late. The ballroom sound system, connected to the same projector feed for the evening's presentation reel, picked up the audio file next. First, Madison's own voice, pulled straight from the Slack export I'd forwarded to Rachel an hour earlier, because I'd also linked a public read-only export link inside the payload, timestamped and dated so nobody could later claim it had been altered after the fact. Then my grandfather's voice, unmistakable, filled the room. If you embarrass this family tonight, I will tell Charles Donovan you are emotionally unstable and a liability. You will be terminated by Monday. Jonathan Pierce stood up slowly. I watched him do it through a stranger's shaky phone camera, because half the room had started filming by then, the way rooms do now when something goes wrong in public. Mr. Bennett, Jonathan said to my father, and his voice had lost every trace of warmth. Are we to understand your family attempted to sell us intellectual property you don't own, while blackmailing the actual owner into silence? My father's mouth opened and closed twice before anything came out. Jonathan, this is clearly some kind of sabotage. A disgruntled employee, a hacker, will get to the bottom of. The disgruntled employee is my daughter, someone said, and it took me a second to realize it was my mother, her voice cracking through the ballroom's microphone feed. Because she'd stepped too close to Madison's still-live phone. It was the first true sentence I'd heard her say all day, and she said it like an accusation instead of an apology. Madison hadn't moved. She stood frozen at the podium in her dress that had its own publicist, mascara starting to run, staring at the red screen like it might apologize and turn itself off. It didn't. I turned my own phone sideways and started recording my own copy of the feed, because at this point I trusted no platform servers more than I trusted my own hard drive. The next 6 days moved faster than I could properly track, which is, I've learned, exactly how institutional consequences work. Slow to start, then all at once. Jonathan Pierce's legal team pulled out of the acquisition within the hour, and sent a formal letter the next morning to Madison's LLC alleging fraudulent misrepresentation of intellectual property ownership, with a copy routed to Rachel's office since her cease and desist in ownership notice had landed in Lux Life's inbox at almost the exact same time as the ballroom's meltdown. Rachel told me later that the timing was, in her professional opinion, the cleanest paper trail she'd seen in a family dispute in a decade, which from a woman who does not compliment easily, felt like a trophy. Michael Grant called me the following Monday, not to discipline me. There was nothing to discipline, but to tell me that Charles Donovan had, in fact, received a voicemail from my grandfather at 8:40 that night, rambling and defensive, clearly recorded after news of the collapsed deal had already reached him through some other channel. Charles never called him back. Michael read me the internal memo Vertex's legal team filed instead, attempted third-party interference with an employee's professional standing, documented and closed, no action required against the employee. My job had never actually been at risk. It only felt that way because Edward had never expected me to report him before he could report me. I filed a report with Detective Olivia Carter of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit, 14 years on the force, unbothered by wealth in a city built entirely on the appearance of it. She listened to the recording twice, took my written statement, and told me flatly that a threat to fabricate professional misconduct in order to coerce someone into surrendering property they legally owned met the state's definition of extortion, and that her department would be referring the matter to the district attorney's office for review. She handed me a card with a case number written on the back, LV 2607-0091, and told me to keep it somewhere I wouldn't lose it. Whether it gets charged, she said, depends on a dozen things above my pay grade, but it's on paper now. That matters more than people think. Madison called me once, 4 days after the ballroom, from a number I hadn't blocked yet because I hadn't thought to. I answered without meaning to. She didn't apologize. She asked, voice thin and unfamiliar, whether I'd done it on purpose. I told her the truth, that I'd built the safeguard 8 months earlier, the same week she asked me to sign nothing, and that she'd simply been the first person to ever force me to use it. She was quiet for a long time. Then she hung up, and I finished blocking the number. Sonia Patel, a senior reporter on TechCrunch's enterprise desk, ran a piece 9 days later. Wellness influencer's $5 million app deal collapses over ownership fraud allegations, built almost entirely on public court filings, the leaked ballroom footage, and an on-record statement from Jonathan Pierce's team declining further comment pending legal review. She reached out to me for comment. I gave her exactly one sentence. I built it. The documentation has always existed. I just finally decided to use it. She used it as the pull quote. My father's firm lost 2 commercial contracts within the month, quietly, the way business always punishes people quietly. City council members who'd once posed for photos with him at ribbon cuttings stopped returning his calls. Madison deleted 6 years of Instagram history overnight, then made her account private, then 3 weeks later stopped posting altogether. Edward never called to apologize. I don't think the word exists for him. He called twice more in the following week, and I let both calls go to voicemail before I blocked his number, then my father's, then my mother's, then last, Madison's. 3 months later, I sat in Rachel's office signing the final paperwork, a formal notarized copyright registration for Aura, solely in my name, along with a settlement agreement that dissolved Madison's LLC's claim to the app entirely and barred any further use of the name, the code, or my likeness in her marketing. Rachel slid the folder across the desk with the particular satisfaction of a lawyer who enjoys her work more than she'll ever admit in a deposition. You could relaunch this yourself, you know, she said. It's a good product under all that theft. I thought about it for exactly as long as it took to sip my coffee. Maybe someday, I said. Right now, I just wanted it to stop being theirs. I still work at Vertex. Michael tells people, when it comes up, that I'm the reason the compliance team updated their outside interference protocol, which is the closest thing to a promotion a person can get for surviving their own family. Natalie and I still get lunch every other Friday. She says she still can't watch the ballroom clip without laughing at the exact second Logan drops the ring light. My mother texted me on my birthday. We miss you. Nothing else. No mention of the fountain or the phone she handed me like a subpoena or the sentence she finally spoke into a live microphone 3 months too late to matter. I didn't respond. Some bridges you don't burn on purpose. You just stop building new planks. And eventually, there's nothing left to stand on. I think about that diner sometimes. The sticky booth. The burnt coffee. The moment I stopped trying to be believed and started trying to be undeniable. My family spent 29 years teaching me that being useful was the same thing as being loved. Turns out being useful is also how you learn to build a trapdoor. They just never thought I'd build one for them.